So let me add just a couple of points here as well too. Let's say this. Let's say P's and N's, so protons and neutrons, are found in the nucleus of the atom. So feel free to draw yourself a little arrow or something to there. And E's are found, electrons are found in E shells, electron shells. And this atom has a couple of shells. So we are going to have a quiz later on yesterday's stuff and today's stuff. So all about these protons, electrons, and neutrons. And on the quiz, there are a few questions where I give you these pictures and I say, what atom is it? Or how many protons does it have? Or something like that. So if I ask a question, which atom is this? One of the particles is going to be the dead giveaway. So the fingerprint, the one that tells us, is going to be our protons. So this is the fourth element. So if you have your periodic tables handy, hydrogen's first, helium second, lithium third, and beryllium is our fourth element. So this element we're talking about here is beryllium. It's number 4 there, right? And then if we want to know the mass number, again, we're just adding the protons and the neutrons together to make 9. In fact, in our lesson today, we're going to start with the standard atomic notation, and then we'll go towards making a Bohr-Rutherford diagram. So that's our goal by the end, be able to draw these Bohr-Rutherford diagrams and sort of know what the particles are, what atom we're talking about. Okay, so we have to discuss a couple of rules about drawing these pictures, and we'll go to the next slide to do that here. And the dude in the video did mention it. So moving on here. All right, so talking about these shells, we have 2 rules. Let's call it 2 rules to follow. For drawing, blah, blah. Let's just put 2 rules. That'll be good enough. Okay, so our first rule here says we can have up to 2 E's in the first shell. You can have 0 in the first shell, you can have 1 in the first shell, you can have 2 in the first shell. But once you hit 2, it's full, and you got to draw a new ring or a new shell. So then the other shell will say we can have up to 8 electrons in other shells. And those are our 2 rules we're going to follow. That's it. We just need to know that when we fill a shell up, that we've got to draw another shell. So some of our early atoms on our periodic table, they're fairly small, so they're not going to have many shells. But once we get to some of the bigger atoms, we're going to have a couple of shells. We're going to have a lot of protons, electrons, and stuff flying around. So we can do a couple of examples here. And like I said, we're actually only able to do the first 20, so we'll pick a couple and we'll do them, and then you sort of have them done. You can just copy them out later when you need to draw the first 20. So we're going to follow these 2 rules here. So let's pretend we're going to do it for lithium. So lithium is number 3. and it's got a mass of 6.9, so we'll round that to 7. So our first thing is we want to create our nucleus. If you look back in our note, it said the nucleus is made of the protons, so we have 3 protons here. And it's made of our neutrons. And remember, we spent yesterday figuring out the neutrons. We're just going to subtract those two numbers. 7 minus 3 gives us 4 neutrons. And you can draw a circle around it, and that is our nucleus. Now, we always have to keep in mind how many electrons we need to draw. So don't forget, the number of electrons is also this bottom number. Number of electrons. That's E. That's an E. So we have 3 electrons to draw. So remember, our rules is that we can fit up to 2 in that first shell. So can we fill the first shell? We sure can. So let's draw, I don't know, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I'm going to draw this shell, might as well. And I'm going to draw my electrons in it. So I'll put one of those electrons there and one of those electrons there. Again, you always sort of have to keep track of how many electrons you've drawn and how many are left to draw. So we needed to draw a total of 3. I've drawn 2 so far. That means I have 1 left to draw. And that means I need to start a new shell. And I'm going to put that 3rd one in the outer shell here. And that's it, almost. But that's how you draw a Bohr-Rutherford diagram. You make your nucleus, and then whatever proton number it is, that's how many electrons you're going to draw, and you just follow your rules for filling up the shell. And we got one other thing we need to do today. It's going to help us for tomorrow's lesson, and that is a definition. I'm going to write it right beside it. Valence electrons. These are a special kind of electron that are going to help us when we start to bond atoms together. So here's the definition for valence electrons. Again, write this down, refer back to it. Valence electrons, so electrons that are found in the outermost shell electrons that are found in the outermost shell. So the very last shell you drew, all I'm asking is how many electrons are in it. So how many electrons are in that outer shell? So here's our outer shell, and we only have 1 electron in that outer shell. So I know this example had 3 electrons, 1, 2, 3. But we're just interested in that one right here. And so once you've identified how many valence electrons there are, underneath the picture here, I just want you to write how many there are, 1 VE. And that, children, is the Bohr-Rutherford diagram for lithium. So I wouldn't mind repeating our steps for a few of these here. Maybe we should do a more complicated one. Let's do fluorine. So I'll start a new slide here. Fluorine. Again, you can't do this without a periodic table, so hopefully you guys already grabbed one. So fluorine is F. And it is number 9 on our periodic table. And when you find it, you'll see it has a mass of 18.999. We're going to round to 19. So step 1, write the particles that are in the nucleus. Protons, neutrons. Protons. 19 minus 9 gives us 10 neutrons. By the way, once you've drawn this and you've drawn it properly, you probably never have to draw it again. You can always just look back at it and get the information you need. Okay, so we have 9 protons, which means we have 9 electrons to put in this one. Sometimes when I draw these ones, I don't draw the full ring. All I'll draw is kind of a partial ring. Because here's what I know. I know that I can fill up that first shell. So there's my first shell, and I'm just going to write 2 electrons right there. So that shell is full. I started with 9. I've drawn 2. That means I got 7 left. So I can't quite fill the next shell. So I'm just going to draw it like that, and then I'm going to write my 7 electrons right there. If you want to do the full ring like we did for lithium, do that. If you want to do a shortcut like this, do this. I don't care. Whatever works for you. And again, the last thing I want us to do here, kids, is identify the valence electrons. So that's just going to be that right there. So this one has 7 valence electrons. Done. That is our lesson. I want you guys to now do the homework, which is draw the first 20. So I'm going to... So recording stopped.